welcome into Monday Trifecta. It's the best way to start your week. I mean, I guess technically you could have started your week at 8 o'clock or something, but that sounds
But I know a couple people are at home just waiting for the Monday Trifecta to drop, so.
Just sitting by their computer or by their
Waiting
phones.
for that YouTube link to finally
where's the
upload.
notification? Well, here we are, Monday Trifecta, a lot to get to.
First, can you address what you're wearing right now?
What? Why you always address what I'm wearing? But I like it. Okay, so actually I'm wearing the Giants stuff. They aren't going to the playoffs, which start this week for the MLB, but it's because Bruce Bochy retired yesterday, and he brought 3 World Series titles to the Bay Area.
If only we had a cameraman that could
zoom in here.
On, look at World
There
Series
it is.
championship.
There's a zoom in. Yeah, we need to get some crew for this Monday Trifecta. But instead I just decided to show some love to the Giants and to Bruce Bochy today. Oh, and Tim Lincecum was back for the first time since 2015. It was a huge pop, as they say, probably the loudest pop.
Nice wrestling reference right there.
Yeah, it was a big pop. But anyway, so that's why I'm wearing my Giants stuff. Yes, I know they're not going to the playoffs. Don't need to text me or tweet me or whatever, message me.
But I have to give you credit. You did call it. You said probably a month ago, either they were going to win it all because they were going to get hot at the end of the season, or they just weren't going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, but
so your
I said they would lose.
true.
I would miss out on the wild card by a game. So I was wrong. But
Details.
You know. But hey, there's always next year. But anyways, let's get back here and locally, Mid-Columbia Conference, wilding out week 4 of the season. Some teams were just week 3 of the MCC, but it was a wild night, and there's no place that we can't start. We got to start with Pasco Richland because it turned into the game of the week, and it was one of the biggest wins. I was looking at the records. It's got to be the biggest win since regular season win for Pasco. Since at least 2014, they went 3-6 that year, and they beat Hanford and Kennewick that year. But to beat Richland is a different animal because of just what Richland has meant to the MCC in this area and getting a state title in 2017. You were there for the end of it, so just just break it down for me.
So basically, when I got there, I kicked things off at the Kennewick Kamiakin game, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But I was on Twitter at halftime and on my way over to Edgar Brown, and it was 7-0. So for me, I was super excited because the only thing that I missed was a Ben Fuel touchdown, and that always sucks because Ben Fuel touchdowns are like the best things in the world. Yeah. So I got over to Edgar Brown. The place was popping. Yeah. A lot of Richland fans came out, which is awesome. It's really cool to see how students and the fans actually travel to these games. It's not really an excuse because all the stadiums are 15 minutes from each other. But Richland came out, Pasco came out. It started to rain a little bit, but I don't think the rain really affected the offense in the first half. Of course, I didn't see it, but the third quarter was all defense from both sides of the football. Yeah. They just couldn't move the ball. That was a problem. They would get chunk plays, and then they would get to the 50-yard line, and they really couldn't advance the ball into the opposing team's territory. It did get interesting when Armani Reyes, on a broken play, it was a typical Johnny Manziel play where nothing went right, and he somehow scampered out of the pocket and went into the end zone. Yeah. Now he did drop the ball after he crossed the plane.
It was close.
I know in the highlight it looked very close, and as I was shooting it, he drops the football and he didn't celebrate right away. He kind of was freaking out because it went to the back of the end zone, and if he had not crossed the plane, that would have been.
And there's no replay in high school.
Obviously no replay. But he scores, ties it up 7-7. The ensuing drive, a high snap at the 15-yard line, goes way over Harrison Westover's head, goes into the end zone. Westover smartly tries to throw it out. So he dives on it, but before his knees goes down, he tries to throw it out. Didn't make it out of the end zone. A Richland offensive lineman recovered. So now it's 9-7. And there's 3 minutes left in the game. And at this point, I'm are they going to pull this thing off? Richland had enough time. I think they had 2 more timeouts left, so they could have, after a safety, obviously you have to kick it off to the opposing team. They could have theoretically had stopped Pasco, would have had another chance. Des Lacone, who had a monster game. He guarded Ben Fuel, and we talked about this last week, the matchup between Fuel and Lacone. 2 best receivers in the MCC, in my opinion, going up against each other. It was really cool seeing Lacone line up on the opposite side of Fuel every single time. They would put him in the slot, and wherever he went, he was shadowing him. And then Lacone returns the kickoff for a touchdown. Now it's 16-7 with only 3 minutes left. Harrison Westover leads them down, scores a touchdown, 16-14. Onside kick, recovered by who? Des Lacone. And like you said, one of the biggest victories in recent history for the Bulldogs. And for the second week in a row, they're kicking off the Monday Trifecta podcast because last week they won in overtime against Southridge. So there's something, and you obviously went out to their training camp, and you came and told me, you said, something's brewing in Pasco.
But even I would say that this is much quicker than I would anticipated, but that's a huge win. They got another huge win, the field goal in overtime, week 3. Week 4, they go and upset Richland, and that is an upset. No matter if you're at home or not, that's an upset. And now they got to keep it going, and now we're going to find out because now they are no one's going to overlook Pasco anymore.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be overlooked because they have, Lee Cohn is a legit number 1 guy and a legit star in this league. And so he's not going to, you're going to start kicking away from him, yeah? You got to start kicking away from him. You can't kick it to him. And then you're going to try and double him, cover him over the top. But yeah, that's a great win, a big win for Pasco. And for Richland, they're now 1-2 in conference. And now they got to win out, basically, because the second 4A spot is now a legit race.
Yeah,
with
it's
Hanford,
a toss-up at this point.
Richland, and Pasco. If things stay the same and how they're going, we're going to come down to week 9 because it's going to be Richland versus Hanford and then Chiawana and Pasco. And can you imagine if Pasco runs the table? Now, they have to play Kamiakin still.
Yep.
They have to play Kennewick still.
Still have to play Chiawana.
And they still have to play Chiawana. So they still have to play 3 of the top 4 or 5 teams in the conference, so it'll be interesting. But if they do, the Gravel Pit Bowl, Chiawana versus Pasco is going to be more than it has since Chiawana opened in 2009.
And just talking about that, like yesterday during our sportscast, I really wanted to pay a lot of attention to this because Pasco and Chiawana currently going into week 5 are tied for number 1 in the MCC. Now, I interviewed Des Lacone after the game, and he said something extremely funny, which, it was true. He's like, you've been faking on us. And I laughed it off, but also recognized and told him, like, I have. Like, I can't, pretend like I was predicting you guys to do these crazy things. Now, it's still young in the season, and I still think that they have a lot of games that have in front of them that's really going to test them. But I also talked to Coach Jackson. He said, we've been preaching this since fall. Yeah. We're just going to fight. It doesn't have to be pretty. And the game wasn't pretty until, the fourth quarter. And that's
16
something
points
that they
in the fourth.
do. And like you said, you're not the underdog anymore.
No.
You wanted the attention. You wanted the respect. Now you have it. It's how you respond now. Pasco 3-1. They only lost to Eastmont in a non-conference game, I think week 2 of the season. 3-0 in the MCC. Next week they got Kamiakin. And then next week for Richland, they're 2-2 and 1-2, like you said, in MCC. And they've got Walla next week, who's coming off a big road win over in Hermiston.
Yeah, and I think you got Kamiakin up for Pasco. So stringing back-to-back really good wins. They've already done it against who they beat week 3?
Who?
Pasco.
They beat Southridge.
Southridge. So you get that win in overtime, then you beat Richland. So now you have 2 games back-to-back, and just keep stringing them along. You're playing Kamiakin. They're coming off a bad loss, and we're going to get all to that. So they're going to be angry, to say the least. So it'll be a good game, and now that game means a whole lot more. Pasco versus Kamiakin, and Richland versus Walla. They have a chance to go to try and get right. I think Walla, Pasco, and Richland's going to be a good game. But let's move attention. We're not going to try and look too far in the future. Let's just recap what else we saw. And the other big game is also the other game that you were at, was Kamiakin and Kennewick. And this one didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go, in the sense that I thought Kamiakin would take care of business, and it was the exact opposite. Kennewick took care of business and made it look very convincing too.
Yeah, I think this, Kennewick has been my dark horse since the preseason. I didn't expect the outcome to be like this, but when I interviewed head coach Randy Folter before the game, he said something very interesting in saying last week they did not have a good week of practice. This week they had a great week of practice, and it really showed. And when I talked to him last week, I kind of asked him, I was like, before the interview when we were talking about who'd they play, Kennewick play last week?
Hermiston.
Yeah. So before the game,
Kennewick played. Yeah,
you're right, Hermiston. So before I went on air and actually interviewed him about Hermiston, I asked him about Kamiakin. I was like, I know you don't like to look ahead. You want to look what's in front of you. But I was like, what do you see from Kamiakin? Because they were at the Thursday night game, scouting and whatever. He said they've got a lot of athletes on the outside and they have a lot of weapons. The thing that we can do is get pressure on that young quarterback, and that's exactly what they do. You always have to be careful, especially when talking about high school kids, because you don't want to, they're high school kids, so you don't want to critique them like you would critique like a professional athlete.
Yeah.
But I'll use a boxing.
Because it's all voluntary.
Yeah, and I'll use a boxing analogy. In boxing, if you come out right the gate and you hit the guy in the face, there's only one or two things you can do. You can get back, or you're just going to go right in. And that's what the defensive line really did with Kamiakin. They got a lot of pressure. They were bringing pressure from corners. They were bringing it from safeties. The linebackers were staying in the box, and the corners really did a good job of locking in on their weapons. But they got a lot of pressure on Kamiakin, and that disrupted a lot of the things that they like to do offensively.
Kennewick's
Going
big
into
up
the
front.
game, Kamiakin had one of the best scoring offenses, whether it was Mercado leaving the MCC in passing or Altahir leading the MCC in rushing. And that front seven for Kennewick did a tremendous job.
Yeah, and that's what's impressive is they're big, and they're the biggest line, I think, in the conference, and they're gonna cause problems. And that was the thing when I talked to Coach during practice this week, like, what were you guys gonna hang your hat on? And they got to win up front. He said they had to win up front, and if they won up front, they were gonna have a chance in this game, and they did. They won up front, and Blaine is starting to be Blaine. First couple weeks, a little rusty, but last week had a good game, and then this week he had another very good game. I think 3 touchdowns and a rushing TD as well. So as your quarterback gets going, that O-line starts blocking for him, and then you have Miles back there. They're a dangerous team, and I kind of go back to a few years ago when Kamiakin played Chiawana really early in the year. They were both 3-0. Chiawana smacked Kamiakin. It was not close. Kamiakin goes on and wins the state title that year. And they would always go back and circle that game against Chiawana and saying that they needed that to be a state title team. So maybe Kennewick needed the same thing, basically, to really take a huge loss against Chiawana and then figure out what they need to be better, and maybe we'll see them morph into the team that we thought kind of coming into the year.
And it's better to take that loss early in the season because it's early, and then you also can just take all the bad film from an early loss, and then you can use that to improve yourself. And like I think one of the problems that they ran into early was Blaine had so many responsibilities. I mean, he's returning punts. He is the captain on the defense, and he's the quarterback on the offense. So I think the first couple of games he was not in a rhythm playing quarterback yet. He was doing a great job at safety, but he wasn't into a rhythm. He got into a rhythm last week against Hermiston, again against Kamiakin. And Miles, I'm always going to say, he is the X factor. He is the engine that's going to make Kennewick's offense really move. He was getting 5, 6, 7 yards per carry, and he was moving the chains. If he can do that and he can put Blaine in opportunities where he can run an RPO or a play action pass, that's really going to open things up for their offense. So Kennewick, big time win over Kamiakin. They got Davis next week, so non-conference game. That'll be a big game for them to test them on the road against Davis. And then Kamiakin got Pasco. So
great game. Kamiakin Pasco is now a game that we got to circle and watch.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we learned also is that Chiawana is still very good at football, and even though they're away from the area and maybe people didn't get to see it, I think even though they lost, they did lose 21-20 to Union. It reinforced to me when I was looking at Twitter and kind of seeing how it was all unwinding. Side note, I tried to watch the feed and it wasn't working for me, and I have the credentials to get into it, so I was really upset about that. But they had all the opportunities to go to Union and take down Union. And Union does have a home field advantage from what I've heard. They have good people who come down there. They have good fans. Whereas around here, home field advantage is a very fluid thing. I mean, like you said.
The Kennewick
15-20
game,
minutes.
both sides were packed because a lot of teams share the same
stadium. And they're
stadium,
15 minutes away from each other, so you don't really have the same home field. But Union does. And Chiawana had every opportunity to win that game. They were stopped on the goal line twice, and they missed an extra point. Everyone's going to look at the extra point and be like, that's the difference of the game. Rightfully and not so rightfully so, like you're your kicker, that's your job. But also, they were stopped on the goal line twice, like literally on the goal line.
If you ask Graf,
he won't say that.
He will never say that it was an extra point. And good coaches and good teams will never blame
the kicker.
1 point from a kicker.
Unless they have an outstanding game.
Yeah, unless the Chicago Bears, like that situation.
Yeah.
But I totally agree.
Chiawana, and they looked good. And the other thing that you notice is their athletes stood up against the athletes on the west side, against the defending state champions. Dion Lead had an outstanding game. I'm still efforting the video. If I could please get that video, that would be outstanding.
Yeah, he's still heated. You should have saw him Friday night.
2 touchdowns, 1 really long one, and an interception. All that coming in the second half. Dion Lee is having an outstanding year. Kobe Young went up and got a ball. So you could tell that Chiawana's best players are still the best can still be the best players on the field against the upper echelon 4A schools. So yes, they lost that game, but there was nothing about that game that made me think, oh, Chiawana isn't the best team from our area and not one of the top 10 teams in the state.
Because I think also what I look back is we took our arguably best team that we have in our area, and we took it against the West Side's best team, or quote unquote the defending champs. So however you want to spin that, they are still the defending champs. And to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. And they held their own.
Yeah, it wasn't like 2 years ago.
One or two plays, the script could have been flipped, and Chiawana could have won. So it also goes back to what we were talking about with some of these teams. You get a loss early in the season, and
and Coach,
let that motivate you.
Coach Graff will tell you and told you, I mean, he told you because you went to practice last week, but he's told me in the past, like, non-conference games, they want to win. They're going to go out to play and win. But it's not the end-all, be-all because they still know the MCC title gives you the #1 seed out of your area and gives you a spot in the playoffs. So, yes, they lost a game. It's not a good loss. I think it's a bigger issue now when you look at playoff seedings.
And
because
expand on that a little
bit. The playoff committee is going to look at your big wins. And the MCC is much more competitive from top to bottom, but there's also not the three or four teams that are really good, that are really contending for the state title. And maybe we will as the year goes on, but right now you don't have those teams that are going to stick out on your schedule when the playoff committee says, okay, what does Chiawana do against whatever team? Your strength of schedule basically is what I'm talking about. And so they needed, I feel like the Riverhawks really needed the Union win, so their strength of schedule goes up. And they have that win so that when the playoff committee comes, they can get that home field game, round 1 of the state playoffs. At this point, just from the way that the committee did it last year, I would be surprised if Chiawana got a home game, even though if they win the MCC title, they're undefeated in league, and their only loss would be, and this is way too far in advance, but the only loss would be to Union, and it was by 1 point. It would still, now it was 1 point and it was a good game, and there was times they could have won that game, so maybe they do, but they really needed that win to get the home field round 1. Is my prediction. I could be wrong, which for the fans in this area, I hope I'm wrong, because I think if you win your conference, you deserve to have a state playoff game at home.
At least one.
Right. No, I'm not saying home field throughout.
But
because,
yeah, at least one. That's something that really doesn't make sense to me. Like when you've explained like playoff seeding and how it really works, it really doesn't resonate with me. For example, let's just play like predictor just for fun real quick. Let's predict that either Chiawana or Pasco, because those are the only 2 undefeated teams in MCC. So let's predict one of those 2 teams goes undefeated. And they win their conference. And then they don't have one playoff
They would
home game.
They would have a playoff. They would have the Week 10 crossover playoff game.
But
they wouldn't have
like
the state bracket.
Yeah, they wouldn't have a
within the state bracket.
That kind of irks me because we put so much attention and so much importance into winning your conference and making sure that you play well in your conference. And if we have a great conference like we do in the Mid-Columbia and you win it and then you're not rewarded therefore in the state bracket tournament, that just doesn't make sense to me.
This is the second year that they've done this. Or the second year they've come to this new format. They did really well. I mean, the committee did very well for the most part, but yes, I think if you win your conference and you win it handily and you do it in convincing fashion, then I do think you should get a state.
And this might be me just being a little bit petty, but also last week they announced the 3 venues for the state championship game, and they're all on the west side.
Well, that was always going to happen.
And that's always going to happen, but also that's just another thing adding on top of, are you forgetting the east side? And so that might just be a little pettiness from my side. Looking at it from that perspective.
They've gone to Tacoma for the last 40 years for the state playoffs in that one spot. So going the west isn't that big of a deal. And also you could have snow. Like you could literally have snow, and you don't want to. I don't think you want to play a state playoff game in snow in Spokane or in our area. But yeah, the state bracket, that's another whole conversation that we probably should talk about at some point. As the new state venues are out and what all that means. But they also sent, excuse me, they also left a note in the WIAA left a note that if 2 teams from Central or Eastern Washington both make the final, they don't have to go to the west side. Mm-hmm. They can agree upon a spot in their area that makes it easier for travel. So that was good by them, I will say. But, for the most part, I think the venues were hogwash. but we'll
Next
move
up,
forward and laugh.
yeah, I think we could go on that for probably like an hour or so.
Yes.
Next up was Hanford versus Southridge over at Fran Rish. This was the game that you were at covering. Falcons, they're 2-2 on the year, had a couple of tough losses to kick off the season, but it seemed like they were able to get into a groove against the Suns.
Yeah, I picked it up late second quarter in the halftime, and by then it was 21 to it was 14. No, it was 21. Hanford already had 21 on the board. Southridge scores one and put 6 on the board, and then Weishaupt and company come down with under 30, less than a minute on the clock, and they score a touchdown right at the buzzer. So it was 28-6 at half, and that's all she wrote. But what I was impressed with, we know about the offense, but I was really impressed with Weishaupt's elusiveness in the pocket. And he moves well, and not just within the pocket. He finds his guys, and he has good feet. But there was a play that we showed in our highlight that he eludes 2 sacks, turns it upfield, and gets positive yards. It wasn't a huge play, but you don't go negative. And we all know with football offenses, staying on schedule and negative plays kill you. So if you get off schedule, so that kept him on schedule and also gave him the opportunity to take a shot downfield with 7 seconds on the clock and score the touchdown that really put it out of reach. Because if you go into halftime up 2 scores in high school football, that's really nothing.
Especially if you receive out of the halftime and you can score quick, then it's just a 1-possession
right,
game. So.
And you never know what's going to happen. Like you say, like in the Pasco game, there's a safety, and then the ensuing punt, they take it back. So you never know. But that touchdown really put things out of reach, I think, for Southridge, because they don't have the firepower to come back from that many points down. But the other thing that stood out to me was the defense. Defense was all over Southridge. We know about the offense and how many points they're going to put up and the yardages they're going to rack up over a game. But the defense came out and had all kinds of pressure on the Suns. Trenton Slater was under pressure the whole time, and they forced turnovers. And that's the X factor. If their defense can keep up with their offense, they're going to be a very tough team and a very strong team. And that's just what we have to see. So if the defense can keep doing this, they're going to be a tough out for the next 6 weeks at least.
And especially with Richland's loss, now everything's open. You have the opportunity to really make some noise and try to get that playoff spot. I just look at how they have progressed in their losses. The first loss against Kennewick was just a defensive outing. I think it was like 17-13 was the final Kennewick won, and it was because Kennewick got an early lead, and their defense is just so stout, especially up front, that they disrupted a lot of things that Hanford wanted to do, and they weren't able to get those points on the board. And then, like you said, it's always a question of whether Hanford's defense can force turnovers or get quick stops or 3-and-outs. Kennewick with Miles Miofsky, they just ran the ball. Against Kamiakin, it was a completely different story. Offense looked amazing, but again, it was the defense because Kamiakin put up, 50-something points in that shootout.
I think, yeah.
And so it's good to have these kind of games where you get momentum on the offensive side, but it's very, like you said, we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to defensively. And next
getting
week,
out early.
They have a huge test because they go up against Chiawana.
Yeah.
And that's really a do-or-die game, I think, because if you go 2 or 3, it kind of depends on what the other schools like Pasco and Richland are going to do in the 4A, but you really, really need a big win. Yeah,
they need that win next week, and they got to get out to early leads, because if you fall behind,
especially against Chiawana.
They fell behind to Kennewick, they fell behind to Kamiakin, and then they they had an early lead against Walla, and they had an early lead against Southridge. And when you have early leads, it's easier for your team just to relax and play football. So they need to get out to an early lead. And yeah, they're going to need to keep this game against Chiawana within reach. And if they score first, they're in a much better spot. Because then you're asking Chiawana to keep up with you as well. But we know Chiawana doesn't have the most prolific offense, but they execute very well, and they're opportunistic. And they take advantage of the opportunities that they have in front of them. Again, like against Union, anytime Union scored, it seemed like Chiawana came right back and scored. So that's just something we're looking forward to. Riverhawks and Hanford, and I believe that game is at Edgar Brown because Hanford plays pretty much all the over 500 teams from last year on the road.
So you're going to also go into a hostile environment, so fans for Hanford hopefully will travel to try to neutralize that.
Yeah.
And also, Chiawana, they score in bunches, whether it's offensively or defensively. I've noticed that defensively they can score a lot of touchdowns and force turnovers, and like you said, they take advantage of your mishaps, so you got to keep those to a very minimum. Hermiston and Walla Walla, homecoming was ruined for the Bulldogs. Wahai. I kind of predicted this game, I think, right? I predicted the win for Wahai because we were out at Hermiston early in the morning on Friday. I'm still trying to recover from those early mornings. I don't know how our morning people do it. This was just old school, not going to be pretty, not going to have ESPN highlights, but
got it done. Wahai got it done, and Wahai is super competitive this year.
Yeah.
And they're going to stay in games, and that's got to come from their head coach, Coach Lufer, who's instilling a different mentality, I think, where he's, like he said early on in camp, he's trying to control the possessions, control the clock. Yeah. And then when they have the chance to score, they're going to have a chance to score. Every game has been close. Every game's been close, except for the blowout loss to Chiawana. But they did score more points against Chiawana than any team except for Union this last week. But, yeah, they scored first against Chiawana, too. But every game has been close. They won, even if they're wins. They've won against week 1, and then against Hermiston, they came back, or against Hanford, they came back to make that game close. So, I mean, then they get the win. It was a close game, but if they can stay in games, it seems like they feel good in those tight games.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I think this is a trend throughout all high school sports, is that you never want to get behind.
No.
Kids at this age, the talent levels that are super high in the elite teams have the capability of going down and then coming back. But for the most part, I would say most teams, about 85% of high school football teams throughout the country, don't have the weapons, experience, and maturity to go down early and come back. And like you said, Coach Lufer, one of the things he said in camp that he wants to do that is going to be key to his offense is time of possession. He doesn't want to go up and down the field in 2 minutes and score touchdowns or get a field goal and then turn it over to his defense. He wants his defense well rested, and he wants his defense, especially the front seven, to control things on the defensive side. And then offensively, chunk plays, 5-6 yards. We don't have to get those 20-yard, 30-yard big plays. But this, like you said, is kind of like a boxing match. They were feeling each other out in the beginning, and then the second half, Walla kind of realized what they were going up against and made the adjustment at halftime, which just is a testament to good coaching, and then came out with the victory. Next week, they got Richland, which is also going to be an important game, not only for Richland, but especially Walla Walla. And then Hermiston goes up against Southridge, and 2 0-4 teams, both obviously don't want to have that record, but that'll be an interesting game because it's pride on the line.
Yep.
Both teams
That's Thursday night, I believe.
Yeah, Thursday night over, I think, at Lampson Stadium is going to be. That's just going to be a battle of pride. Nobody wants to finish the season without a win. And at 0-4, both teams want to get a victory on the board. Someone's going to get a win. So somebody's going to get a win.
Hermiston is really hurting without their quarterback.
Yeah, and we talked to Coach at the pep rally, and it's just been – it's hard, especially when –
young kids getting injured for a long season.
There wasn't a quarterback battle. It'd be different if there was a quarterback battle because both quarterbacks get reps with the ones. And so both quarterbacks have the experience and they have the opportunity to kind of grow. It wasn't like that for the Bulldogs. They handed the reins over to Chase, and then Chase gets injured in week 1. And so it's slowly getting your quarterback more experience, getting him time with the ones, and he's got to build chemistry with the receivers now. So they're kind of transitioning, but
their defense is okay though, is good. I mean, Walla Walla scored 14 points, I think, something like that. If you give up 14 points in high school football, you have a chance to win the game. So their defense is good, and I think can keep them in games. And now if their offense can come around, they'll be in a better spot. I know Coach Fayette really wanted to win.
Yeah, he definitely wanted to get a victory. And also, if you look back, I always think of it this way: you evaluate games by halves. And so Hermiston's defense in the first half is very good. In the second half, that's when fatigue comes in. And fatigue is a result of your offense not being able to stay on the field. Your defense gets tired, and in the second half, that's a result. So if they can keep these games close, they can pull it out, give your defense opportunities to rest, they'll have a big game on Thursday.
It's a big game. Quick turnaround, too. Not as quick as like Sunday to Thursday, but Friday to Thursday, it's good. Now we are unveiling our, I'm going to hide the cord, power rankings for the year. We are now week 4, almost halfway through. So now every week we'll give our power rankings. And this is at the very moment, people. This isn't my power rankings. The way I looked at it is as of right now, not how I necessarily would see this in the future. It was if I was looking at things today, who are my power rankings?
And
some people do it other ways. Some people think, okay, I'm going to do my power rankings with how I think that it'll all unfold.
Yeah, and since we're going to do this week in and week out, it's going to be based on what we saw on Friday, and this is kind of like a Monday reaction. And the way I did it as well is it's not going to be lining up with the standings. Because the MCC, if you go on their website, they have the standings, 1 through 9. This is power rankings, and I'm basing on what my eyes see and what the numbers see. So at number 1, the Chiawana Riverhawks, they are currently 3-1 on the year, 3-0 in the MCC, one of only 2 teams that are undefeated in the Mid-Columbia Conference. I think they have the firepower on the offensive side, and their defense has shown me that even against Union, only allowing 21 points against the defending state champs, they have the offensive and the defensive firepower to go up against anybody. They've been the most impressive team to me. Number 2, I might upset my friends over in Pasco with this one, but I'm putting Kennewick at number 2 just because of what I saw on Friday. Pasco won an incredibly great, entertaining game the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. I saw Kennewick dominate from kickoff till the clock went 0-0. So I got Kennewick at number 2, and they're only behind Chiawana because week 2, Chiawana put a hurt on them, but I think they're trending in the right direction. Number 3 is Pasco. There's nothing, I can't say anything. Like, the numbers do not lie. The way that they've played and performed. Now, some people might argue they're winning against Southridge and Hermiston. Both teams haven't won a game. Oh, victory is a victory, and they're undefeated. So they come in at number 3. Kamiakin, I had them at number 2 coming into Friday, but that loss against Kennewick's going to drop them down to 4, currently 3-1. I put Hanford ahead of Richland. So Hanford's coming in at 5. Richland coming off a big loss. I think that's demoralizing to teams like that. We'll see if they'll be able to bounce back. But I would put Hanford ahead of Richland. Both are 2-2 on the year. Then Richland coming in at 6. Walla coming in at 7. And then Hermiston, I think, have just been in closer games than Southridge. That's the only reason I put them at 8. And then Southridge at 9. So power rankings as they go right now, I really think it's a 4-team race at this point for the MCC title, that being Chiawana, Kennewick, Pasco, and Kamiakin. We've got a great week this week in my power rankings, 3 versus 4, and we'll just see how these things turn out.
My power ranking for this week, the great game, is 3 versus 4 too, but it's a little flipped. So he hasn't seen mine yet. He might have seen it now, but I have number 1 Chiawana, which is we both agree upon that, because until you're beaten within the MCC, you're going to be the top team, and the caliber of teams they've played throughout. Like, they've played good teams already. They played Richland, they've played Union, and they've played Kennewick. All 3 really good teams right off the bat, and they've took care of business, and they took care of a pesky Walla team, as we've noticed already on the road. Kennewick is my number 2 team. I've been really impressed with what they've done since that Chiawana loss and how they've come back and took care of business. I think that Chiawana loss was a good thing for this team and something to build upon. Now, I have Kamiakin 3rd because I think Kennewick is better than Richland, obviously. And I think Kamiakin is also better than Richland. And so that loss, those 2 teams going head-to-head, both those teams I think are a little bit better than Pasco and Richland, which then I would have Pasco at 4 because they took care of business. Again, Richland, they come in there. So that's why I'm saying Kamiakin versus Pasco this week is a great game. Whether you have them 3-4, we both have them 3-4. It's just in what order, so we're going to find out.
Yeah.
We're going to find out exactly what order they should be in because it's a great game, and that's why I just have Pasco at 4 because I think Kamiakin and Kennewick, that game was just a better game between better teams at this point. And then Richland, I have at 5 because, again, I think Pasco is a better team than what Hanford played against Southridge. And so that's why. And they played them tough, and they had the lead, and they were up 7-0, and Pasco comes in and scores 16 points in a hurry, but then they came back, and it shows something about those kids to at least give them a chance to win that game. Because they could have just, oh, wow, this is an upset. And they know, kids know, because I've been around these student sections enough, and I know that there's a lot of heckling with who you beat and who you don't beat. So I'm sure the kids were well aware, but it was a 16-14 game, a close game. So that's why I have Richland right there. I have Hanford right behind Richland, and that's also part of those things that I just go back to, like Hanford's never beat Richland or beat Richland once. So until you do it, let's see it. That's why I have them there. And then I have Wahai, a pesky Wahai team, and I like what they're doing. Hermiston and then Southridge. And one of those is going to get their first win on Thursday, which is a great thing for those teams to get your first dub and not go the season thinking, when are we going to get it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if we look at the 3A seeding, I would say is pretty well in hand. It's going to be Kennewick and Kamiakin coming out of 3A is my thought on that. 4A, though, is going to be fun to see how it all shakes out. Chiawana has the early lead. They've only played one 4A team, I believe. Or no, they played two 4A teams, Walla and Richland, so they have two teams wins against them. They have a good lead there. But then Pasco, Richland, Hanford, even Walla, don't lose games against 4A. You can't lose anymore against 4A. But you can't really lose because, again, this conference does it right. They don't do it like the GSL, where the GSL only predicts or only gives their seeding based on the 3A head-to-heads and the 4A head-to-heads. The MCC does your overall record, and then the tiebreaker is how you do against your own classification. Yeah. So you don't want to lose at all, but you definitely do not want to lose within your own divisions.
I mean, just looking at these names, looking at these teams, I see, three tiers. I see the bottom tier, which is, Hermiston, Southridge really looking to try to get their first win on the season. And then I see this middle tier of Hanford, Richland, and Walla, three pesky teams that at this point in the season, if you have to play them, don't take them lightly. Anything can happen. And I think Richland, Hanford, and Walla being the middle tiers, anything can go. If you take care of business, if you win out, or if you win out and only have one loss, you're putting yourself in position where you could knock out some of these top-tier teams. And right now, the top tier is Kamiakin, Pasco, Kennewick, and Chiawana. You're at the top, but also there are trap games. As you know, anything can happen in high school football. Weather conditions, kids' psyche, injuries, those things can come into account. And so I'm looking at these three tiers, and I'm really just seeing the MCC is not a conference where there's cupcake games. Nope. And there's nothing that's guaranteed.
No, I mean, every game is going to mean something down the line, and that's what's great. This is what's great about this conference when we look at it, whereas maybe in years past we could have put up the wins and the losses kind of beforehand, and it's kind of gone to script. This year it is not going to script, which makes it really a lot more exciting, which I'm looking forward to seeing how this all shakes out the final 6 weeks of the regular season, and then we'll go into the playoffs, or 5 weeks of the regular season. Quickly, let's do a little smaller school roundup. I don't like to say small schools. I feel like it's so derogatory, but so smaller school.
Less student-filled schools.
Yeah. And I've been really impressed with Prosser. We're not going to go in depth like we did the MCC because we're just running a little bit out of time, but Prosser has found their identity. First 2 weeks, the first week they suffer a terrible injury. It's hard for a team to bounce back, but they have found it. They are a ground and pound team behind Logan Kendenoza, and their defense is lights out right now. They've played Ephrata and Sela. Yeah, Ephrata might not be the best team in the world, but Sela is definitely a competitive team. They're competitive year in and year out, and they put 38 on them and shut them out. So they've outscored their opponents 68-0 in the last 2 weeks, and it all started with the run game with Logan, and then Caden comes in at quarterback, and if he has the opportunities to go over the top to Will Thompson, who is an outstanding wide receiver.
Made mixed picks this weekend with a crazy play.
Yeah. They're going to take those shots, but they're going to ground it out. It's kind of like the Seahawks, I feel like. You're going to just run the ball, and then when you have a shot, you're going to take your shot. And if they can have that formula, even if they're not the most talented team out there against any opponent, that formula works against teams because you control the clock, like we've talked about, and you don't give that offense any more opportunities. And your defense, the Prosser defense, if they're rested, they're going to hurt you. Now, we'll go to your favorite stat, the outscoring of opponents. And there's two teams that stand out.
These two teams are outscoring their opponents by such a huge margin, and I really look back on this because if you look at scoring margins, and I think this is really prominent in football as well as basketball, and it's a stat that I had mentors tell me and teach me playing in sports. So look at how teams play overall and also game by game is his scoring. Because at the end of the day, the only way that you win is you put more points on the board than the other team. And you look at point differentials, it tells you two stories. It tells you the offensive story and it tells you the defensive story. So starting with Royal, they're outscoring their opponents 196-23. Now, had it been like 55-23 and they were undefeated, you'd be like, okay, defense is stout, but offense struggles to put points on the board. So the story that I would take from that is they better hope that they don't play an offensive juggernaut, because the defense, if they can't hold up against them, I don't know if the offense. But with Royal, both sides of the football are doing tremendous. Their last state title was in 2017. You even asked the question, do you think they're better this year? I don't know what they were last year, but I know what they are this year, and they are a pretty good football team.
I think they might be more explosive this year. I think they have. I think they might be more explosive at the quarterback position with a little more athleticism, which allows them to get out of the pocket a little bit more. I like them. They have some sophomores on defense that are outstanding. They're already getting some D1 looks. So, I think they might be better this year. And if they're better this year, I think they do miss Angel. Lorenzo Myrick is a great running back, and he's a shifty kind of speed running back. Angel Hernandez from last year was kind of ground and pound guy in their heart of their defense. Obviously, he's an MVP. He was the MVP of the conference, so he's a great player. But they're just different. I think they're a little bit more spread out, a little bit more take you over the top, and they'll score big plays. But they also look a lot of the same, same names. Christensen's, there's a lot of Christensens, and
Christensen connection, but not related.
You just filter in the next generation of the Christensens and the Diaz's and all the other names out there, the all Reds and all that. So I don't know. I think they're very good. They've put more points on, and the wins have been more convincing. So they might be better. And, man, they don't have a state title to lean on this year. That's the other thing. They had 3 in a row. They were going for the rare, ultra rare 4-peat, and it didn't get quite done. I think they're hungry, and I think we might see them in Lakewood.
I'm hoping to see them in Lakewood.
Yeah,
I think they can do it.
They are an outstanding team. The other team.
Last smaller school that we'll touch on before we could wrap it up, because obviously these podcasts are going longer and longer, which is good because we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and we'll have the rundown so you guys know exactly what we're talking about. But TCP, man, 224-26. I'm not very good at math, but that's plus 198.
Yeah.
I mean, the first 2 games, I was just talking about the offense, and that was super disrespectful to the defense.
They're good.
Their defense is very good.
Yeah.
They won 48-14 this weekend. I don't know what else I can say. Offensively, you look at Davian Iniguez, who's a shifty running back. I think of a Christian McCaffrey when I see him play. He can catch the pass out of the backfield. If you hand it to him, he can get kind of sneaky and shifty to get through the lanes, and then he can get it to that second level. And once he gets to that second level, he's got that kind of speed and quickness. And Dante Mairi, he sends me his highlights every single week with his stat line, and I swear every single week it's 300-some passing yards. He's throwing about 70% completion, and he's multiple touchdowns and not turning the ball over. I mean, only 4 games in, I'm looking at these 224-26. I'm seeing an elite, not a good, an elite offense and another elite defense.
Yeah, I mean, they are not slowing down. They play a 3A Rogers School this week up in Spokane on Thursday. I believe it's Thursday or Friday, one part of the doubleheader. So that'll be interesting to see. And and then they play Columbia. Columbia is another good team. Columbia Burbank, the Coyotes. We haven't talked about them a lot. Maybe we'll get to them next week. But they had a good win against Lynn Ritzville, the Broncos. And that Columbia game versus TCP is going to be a good game. That's October 11th in 2 weeks. So that's a game within the EWAC. That's probably going to determine the EWAC title. And I'm looking forward to that. And I want to see TCP in some competitive games because I want to see how they react. But maybe we won't see them in competitive games because they're just that good. Now we got to shift gears to the ice because it was a great weekend for the Tri-City Americans. They went 2-0 this weekend against 2 division rivals, Seattle and Spokane. And Beck Warm was outstanding. I think week 1, didn't talk to him, I don't know, but he was coming back from NHL camp, right off the plane basically, right into game 1, and then had to play a back-to-back. Man, I know how I am after traveling across the country. He was in Washington for the Capitals, all the way to Seattle. I don't want to play in any sporting event the next day.
I mean, when I moved here, it took me like 2 weeks to get adjusted. So
Yeah,
I can only imagine what
so
he
maybe,
was going through.
And he would never make excuses because Beck doesn't, but, played good. He played really good opening night. I'm not saying like he had a bad opening night, but then to play a back-to-back, kind of let in some goals, and there was a goal that would shake any goalie, I think. So he had a little rough going, but then he bounces back this weekend and shows why he's a premier goalie in the Western Hockey League. 70 saves, gave up 1 goal, had a shutout on Saturday because they played Friday, Saturday. And if they get this goaltending from him all year long, like they did last year, they could be scary because their offense seems to have more offense than I thought they were going to have. And we know Coach Buckberger is going to have this team competitive and grind it out and be in every game for the most part. Man, I was really impressed by Beck and what he put together this last weekend and how he kind of put the team on his back, and then the guys kind of came around to him. And we've seen Sasha, and this is still without 2 of their premier guys, Christoph Freibeek and Kyle Olsen. They're still gone. Now, I don't know I think Kyle's coming back. I'm pretty sure Kyle's coming back because they wouldn't have given him the captaincy if they didn't think he was coming back. And last year, when Michael Rasmussen was the captain, they named a co-captain, and that was because there was an idea that Michael would not come back, and Michael didn't come back. But they haven't done that this year, and I think Bob usually has a pretty good feel for those types of things. So I think Kyle's coming back, but he's playing well with the Sabres. He's making an impression. Now, Christoph is one that I'm reading the tea leaves here. And so this is purely speculation on my point. But when I talked to Coach Buckberger in practice, he said a comment about guys coming in and out, and some guys are still at camp and may not come back. And it was kind of in passing. And so I was like, that made me think. But then I also realized that Christoph Freibeek is in the San Jose Sharks Barracuda training camp, which is an AHL affiliate. And again, this was before we're taping this, so it could have changed since then. But he went to an AHL training camp. Most guys, when they get sent back to juniors, they come right back to juniors. They don't get sent to the minor league training camp. Yeah. So I'm reading the tea leaves. I could be very bad at reading the tea leaves, but maybe we don't see Christoph Freibeek back. But if he stays with the San Jose Barracuda, guess who's getting the San Jose Barracuda jersey with Freibeek on the back?
This guy.
This guy.
I might even get one. I don't think I haven't had a hockey jersey since Ovi. I'm super excited because we talked last week about if you can go 3-2 on the road trip, coming home for the home opener, you're putting yourself in good position. They're 3-1 right now.
Yeah, and
they have the potential on Wednesday to go 4-1, come home, have that Toyota Center rocking and welcoming them home. Beck Warm, you touched on literally everything that I could have said about it. WHL gave him the #1 star this weekend with his performance, shutting out the Chiefs, only allowing 1 in the game on Friday. And so
T-Birds
had a lot of people. I've talked to Mary. I've talked to people within that organization who I was asking because I'm from DC, huge Caps fan. He was at Caps camp, and they said he's having a great camp, had a great year last year, great goalie, and the things that I'm seeing from him. And here's my concern was in all the preseason games and even the first 2 regular season games, they would win, but the other team would outshoot them, which means that other team is getting more opportunities. Now, if you have a stout offense and you don't really need that many shots and you can convert and score, okay. But again, multiple more opportunities for the other team. But it seems that Beck Warm is more than capable of making sure that net and that front line is locked down. Now, defensively, we got to help out our goalie. Offensively,
they give up a lot of shots, and they did last year, and they're going to give up a lot of shots, I think. I know they want to get it better, and actually 32 and then 38 aren't terrible numbers. I think that's what it was, 32 on Friday and then 38 in his shutout. Those aren't terrible because if you're a hockey team, you want at least 10 shots a period. That's kind of, I think, what you're shooting for. So they did a little bit better. They did much better this weekend. Opening weekend, not so much.
Yeah, opening weekend was rough. But again, that's opening weekend, and so you can't put so much stock into the first couple games. Offensively, though, there's 3 guys that are jumping out off the stat sheet for me. Nikita Krivokrasov.
Krivokrasov, yes.
2 goals through the first 4 games. He's been pretty explosive. He's got a good stick, and I think he has an opportunity of putting up a lot of points for them this season.
And don't be fooled by his name. He's not a foreign player.
No, he's from Minnesota.
His pops played in the league.
Yeah, and so having a dad that plays in the league,
And that also means
super helpful.
Foreign import players play on bigger ice.
Mm-hmm.
So when they come over to North America, it takes a little bit of time for them to adjust to the smaller ice surface. But he hasn't done that. He's been playing in the U.S. for a long time, since he was born, obviously. So he doesn't have to have that adjustment. That's why I think he's doing really well, too.
Yeah, so he's a player that I would keep your eyes out. Also, Sam Huo, great player. 3 goals through the first 4 games. He's explosive on the offensive side. And
Man, if they get that from him.
The best player, and I'll turn the time over to you, is Sasha Mutala by far. He's got 8 points, 5 assists, 3 goals.
8 points in 3 games because he was held off the score sheet 1 time.
Yeah, so
But I mean, he played in all 4, but he didn't score any points in one of the games. So really, he has
8 points in 3 games. Dude, he's just. I think until Kyle comes back, obviously Kyle's the captain, but as leadership goes, and performance and helping the young players in the locker room,
through the first
Sasha
2 weeks,
Mutala has been extremely, extremely impressive. Yeah. And again, it all comes down to me. We're so young in the season, so you can't put so much stock into what's going on. Obviously, you see the stuff that you like, and you hope that they continue, and they see stuff that you hope that they cut out. But all these games are on the road. So all this production that we're looking at, all these stats that I have in front of me, they're all on the road. And I can only assume that they're going to be better at home.
Sasha is different this year. You could just tell by the interactions you have with him, the way he carries himself on and off the ice, in practices, because that's all. We haven't been able to see games in person yet because we don't have the travel budget to go to the west side all the time. But he carries the puck more. He's more confident with the puck more. He's distributing. He just has taken his game to a whole new level. And one bite I had from him earlier in this year, he said there was games where he thought he played his best games last year and it wouldn't show. And now he's realizing that wasn't his best, and he needs to bring his best every game to be a premier player in the WHL. And I love the steps he's taking. He seems more confident. He's past his NHL draft year, which is a blessing and a curse because, you want to put up points so that you're drafted higher. But now he's drafted. He's property of the Avalanche. He doesn't have to worry about that. He's taking it to a new level. Sam Huo, if you can get goals from that dude, he had 3 goals in 31 games with the Americans last year. He has 3 goals in 4 games. So if number 12 starts doing that and he's been good in the faceoff circle, man, that is a great piece that they traded for last year, and he's come in. And this is probably the piece that Bob was thinking they were getting when he made that trade. Yeah, last year maybe didn't put up the numbers. Maybe they wanted a little bit more from him. But it was maybe more in the thought that this year we need him. We need him to be offensive. And if he's taken his game to the next level, those are points that coming into the year you didn't really know you're getting. And so if Sam keeps playing like that, it'll be great. And that means the homecoming on Saturday night, your first Americans home opener.
Yes, sir.
Will be rocking. The Toyota Center should be rocking. They have brand new scoreboards. The lights are new as of last year.
And
They're
it's
making
still cold, so
improvements.
bring your jackets.
Saturday, if your boys come back 4-1, pack that place because they have then just beaten everyone
that
in their division except for Portland. And that was a mirage, I think, as far as how out of hand that game got. Now, are they going to play? Is Portland a tough team? Yes, but it was over within minutes because they gave up some quick goals. So I like where the Ams are at when they get Kyle back, and if they get Kristoff back, they're just adding more offense to Ams Nation. Home opener on Saturday.
We will be live from the Toyota Center.
Wow, that was like almost an hour long. I hope you listened to all of it.
Yeah, if not, then, hopefully you're looking at the rundown right now. And if you made it all the way through, you are true fans of the Monday Trifecta podcast, and we're so grateful for all
Monday Trifecta.
Thanks for tuning in. Alan Hoshida, Myck Miller, you know what it is every single Monday here at Keeper Action News. We will see you next Monday.
Monday Trifecta.